I remember the smell, man. It wasn't just wood smoke. It was this bitter, sickly sweet scent of pulverized drywall and diesel fuel, the kind of smell that, as a fire chief for 30 years, always meant one thing: disaster. 6 weeks I was gone, driving the old RV cross-country to see my grandkids down in Florida, and I came back to find the house I built with my own hands, my refuge on Lake Serenity, wasn't just gone. It was being wiped out. I steered the RV around the final bend of the private drive, gravel crunching under the tires, a sound that usually meant peace, and there they were. Yellow, hard hats, a giant excavator, and a fresh pile of splintered wood and broken glass where my front porch used to be. My heart just hammered, cold, sick feeling spreading right through my gut. But then I saw it, buried beneath the rubble like a tombstone, the dark, beautiful mahogany of Eliza's piano. The one I'd bought her for our 25th anniversary, the one where she played every night, the music drifting out over the water. It was smashed, splintered, the white keys scattered like broken teeth. That was the moment, when shock burned right off and all that was left was this cold, hard, white-hot rage. I slammed the RV into park and stumbled out. A guy in a clean vest, the foreman, came walking over, clipboard held like a shield, looking at me like I was an inconvenience. "Sir, you can't be here. Demolition site." I just stared at him. "This is my home," I finally managed, my voice sounding distant. And he sighed, like I was the dumbest person he'd met that day. "You didn't pay your HOA dues, buddy. We posted the notice months ago. HOA dues." I looked him dead in the eye, keeping my voice steady, which took everything I had. "I own 12 acres here. My property line ends a quarter mile before your little subdivision starts. I made sure of it." He just gave me this small, dismissive smirk, tapping the clipboard. You are now. The words hung there, heavier than the dust in the air. My mind reeled back, tracing the faulty wire. 12 years ago, the developer built Willow Creek Preserve on the farmland next to mine. They offered a fortune for my lake frontage. I said no. This land was where Eliza and I built our life. It wasn't for sale. So, we struck a legal deal, hired surveyors, drove iron stakes deep into the earth, filed the paperwork with the county. My land was legally and officially carved out. Later, I walked down to the mailbox. It was stuffed with junk, bills, and 2 thick envelopes from the HOA. One was a notice of 6 months of overdue dues, plus late fees, threatening a lien. The second was a photocopy of board meeting minutes, a paragraph circled in red. They had voted to retroactively annex my property into the HOA to ensure aesthetic cohesion for their lakefront view. Aesthetic cohesion. They just voted my life away while I was visiting my grandkids. This wasn't a mistake, man. It was a deliberate, arrogant land grab. I called the county records office right then. The clerk was confused. "No record of condemnation, Mr. Whitaker. Taxes are paid." But she found the demolition permit. "Mr. Whitaker, this is very strange. Your parcel isn't even in their jurisdiction. They have no legal authority over your property." The ice in my veins turned to steel. I didn't get emotional at a fire scene, and I wasn't going to now. "A crime has been committed," I told her. "I need to see the authorization signature." She emailed the PDF. It was the standard county permit, and there it was. My name in my handwriting, in the box labeled Property Owner Authorization. But it was too perfect, too clean, no pressure points. It looked sterile. Then I remembered the 2014 hailstorm when I'd signed a permit on a digital pad. They hadn't just forged my name, they had found the old digital file and copy-pasted my signature right onto the demolition order. The RV became my command center. My fuel was injustice. I went to the Willow Creek Preserve HOA website, digging through the poorly organized public documents section. Tucked away in a forgotten corner, I found an old community forum, a digital ghost town. A thread from 4 months ago, started by the board president, Veronica Thorne. Subject line: the problematic lakefront plot. I read her posts. She complained about my older, custom-built home not matching their cookie-cutter aesthetic, and about my refusal to sell. Then, The third post down, the whole thing laid bare. If he won't sell, we'll force a compliance lien. We'll make it make sense. Trust me, we'll make it make sense. The words of a bully who thinks she's above the rules, but the real evidence was still in the PDF itself. I opened the properties, the metadata. There it was, clear as day. The original county file was modified, saved, and finalized on a home computer registered to a user named V. Thorne. The timestamp, 2:07 a.m. on a Tuesday night. This was not a clerical error. This was premeditated, midnight fraud. I drove into town and went straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Pete Hansen, a man I'd known for decades. I laid it all out. The security footage showing no notices, the forum post, the two signatures side by side, the 2:07 a.m. metadata. Pete leaned forward, grim-faced. "Jack," he said quietly, "that HOA, Veronica Thorne. This isn't their first rodeo. We've had a half-dozen similar complaints over the years. Bogus fines, property line threats, but every single one of them backed down. Paid the fine, gave up the fight." He slid a sheet of paper across the desk, a list of names and numbers. They were too scared to go on the record. Maybe they'll talk to you. They had picked the wrong man to bully this time. To fight a lie, you need a truth so hard it can crush their story. I needed proof my house wasn't just not condemned, but that it was a fortress. I called Dusty McAllister, an old structural engineer from my fire chief days. Dusty, who we called Stitch because he could patch up anything. He arrived in his old Ford, took one look at the rubble, and his jaw tightened. "This wasn't a collapse, Jack," he growled. "This was an execution." Dusty spent an hour on my property. He used a drone, flying it low over the foundation, and the images came back crystal clear. No stress fractures, no upheaval. The concrete slab I poured 22 years ago was rock solid. "Exhibit A," he said. The foundation was sound. Then he looked at the fraudulent inspection report the HOA had filed. He zoomed in on the signature. "Look at the spelling," he told me. The licensed inspector's last name was Lundholm. Lundholm on the report. Lundholm. Lundhome. Another forgery. Sloppy, arrogant, built on the assumption that no one would ever actually check. 2 days I prepped. In the RV. I talked to the people on Pete's list. The man fined $2,000 because his fence was allegedly 6 inches over a line. The woman threatened for painting her trim the wrong shade of beige. They had stories of being bullied into silence. I had a mountain of proof. Stitch sent his final report. 10 pages, high-resolution drone photos, codes my home had exceeded. The HOA board meeting was held in the clubhouse. Veronica Thorne sat at the head of the table in a sharp pantsuit, a tight, fixed smile, running her tiny kingdom like a drill sergeant. She didn't notice me until I stood up during the new business portion. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, her voice like fingernails on a chalkboard. "This meeting is for members of Willow Creek Preserve. Your status is resolved." "I'm not here as a member, Veronica," I said, walking to the front. "I'm here as the owner of the property you illegally demolished." I placed a stack of my prepared packets on the table, turning to hand them out to the board and the 15 residents watching. "This is highly irregular," she sputtered, a flicker of panic in her eyes as she scanned the county map on the first page. "It's all public record, Veronica," I said, my voice filling the quiet room. "Page 1. My property has never been part of this HOA. Page 2. The demolition permit with my forged signature, copied from a 2014 roofing permit. Page 3. The fraudulent inspection report. Note the misspelled inspector's name. A man rarely makes that mistake on an official document." A low murmur spread through the room. People were flipping pages, their eyes wide. I pulled the small digital recorder from my pocket and held it up. The most important piece of evidence isn't on paper. I pressed play. Veronica's voice, tiny but unmistakable, filled the room. "He thinks he's outside the HOA. We rewrote the boundary map. Trust me, we'll make it make sense." The gasp from the residents was a single sharp sound. Veronica's face went from pale to beet red. The mask was gone. The HOA's lawyer, a nervous man in a cheap suit, stood up. "This recording is inadmissible. None of this will hold up in court, Mr. Whitaker," he blustered, trying to silence me with the threat of legal action, just like they had silenced everyone else. I just looked at him, and, for the first time that night, I let myself smile. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "That's fine," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I'm not going to court. I'm going to title." The lawyer's smug expression evaporated. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Veronica just stared at me, a blank, confused look on her face. I let the weight of those words sink in. "You see," I began, calm and even, "about 20 years ago, the original developer, Cresslin Holdings, went bankrupt. It happened right after they finished paving the roads and laying the utility lines. Most people only bid on the empty lots. But I bought something different. I was interested in protecting my own peace and quiet." I paused. "I bought the land the roads are built on. I bought the easements that give this community access to water, sewer, and power." The lawyer sank into his chair and put his head in his hands. He knew. Veronica still looked defiant. "That's impossible. The HOA owns the common areas." "No, Veronica, it doesn't. The HOA was granted an easement, a legal right to use land you do not own. And like any legal agreement, an easement can be terminated if the terms are violated. Demolishing the property of the man who granted you that access is what lawyers call a catastrophic breach of that agreement." The blood drained from her face. She finally understood. "As of 8 o'clock this morning," I continued, "I had my attorney file a termination of all access and utility easements for the Willow Creek Preserve. The road you drove on to get here tonight, Thornbrook Lane, is now officially a private road. My private road. Access is revoked," a woman gasped. "You can't do that. How will we get to our homes?" "I'm a reasonable man," I told her. "For the next 48 hours, I will permit residents to come and go. After that, a gate is being installed at the entrance. I suggest you get your groceries." The room exploded. A chorus of angry, panicked voices turned not on me, but on Veronica. "You knew this? Our property values will be zero." Her power, built on a flimsy foundation of rules and fines, had just vanished. Before the shouting could reach a fever pitch, a man and his wife quietly approached me. It was Mr. and Mrs. Peterson from the sheriff's list. "Mr. Whitaker," he said, his voice low. "Veronica denied our permit to build a wheelchair ramp for my wife's mother. Said the lumber wasn't on the approved list." I looked at his wife, exhausted and defeated. I thought of Eliza and the future ramp I had planned for us. "Your ramp has nothing to do with the HOA," I told him, loud enough for others to hear. "Your property is subject to county building codes, not Veronica's personal taste. Get a permit from the county. Build your ramp. If anyone from the HOA sets foot on your property to stop you, they'll be trespassing." He stared at me for a moment. Then a slow, hopeful smile spread across his face, and he shook my hand. I wasn't a new tyrant. I was just tearing down the fake walls Veronica had built around them all. 2 days later, as a crew was installing the posts for my new gate at the end of Thornbrook Lane, 2 sheriff's deputies pulled up. Veronica was in the passenger seat, pointing at me with a shaking, manicured finger. She had called them, claiming I was illegally blocking a public road. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply invited the senior officer into my RV and laid the documents out on the small table. The plat map, the title to the road itself, the entire stack of evidence, the forged permit, the fake inspection, the emails. He read through them silently, his expression growing grimmer and grimmer. "Wire fraud, forgery, conspiracy," he muttered, listing the crimes out loud. He went back to his car, radioed in, and returned with a different look on his face. The look of a man who realized he'd stepped into something far bigger than a neighborhood spat. "Mr. Whitaker," he said, now full of respect, "with the forgery of official documents and the use of the mail to send fraudulent notices, this is now a federal matter. We're calling the FBI. Veronica Thorne's final act of desperation was her undoing. What started as my fight became a full-blown criminal investigation." The FBI subpoenaed everything. They found a slush fund she'd been using for personal expenses. They used the metadata to prove she'd uploaded the forged documents from her home computer. The arrests happened 3 weeks later, not in a dramatic raid, but in the most humiliating way possible. FBI agents showed up at the next hastily called HOA meeting, the one where residents were trying to figure out how to dissolve the very organization that was strangling them. They walked in, called her name, and put her in handcuffs right there, in front of the neighbors she had terrorized for years. The final click of those cuffs was the last bit of power she would ever wield in Willow Creek Preserve. With the criminal case underway, my civil suit was a formality. Facing overwhelming evidence, the HOA's insurance company settled immediately. They cut me a check for $948,200. It covered the full replacement value of the home I'd built, plus punitive damages for what they'd done to Eliza's piano. The first thing I did was hire a crew, a construction crew. The new house looks a lot like the old one, but it's better. It has a reinforced storm shelter in the foundation and a wide ADA-compliant ramp leading to the front door just in case any of my friends like Dusty ever need it. The residents, now free from Veronica's reign, approached me about the road. I didn't want to be a landlord. So we formed a new, voluntary neighborhood group. No fines, no architectural review board, no enforcers, just neighbors agreeing to chip in to keep their roads safe. I even helped Mr. Peterson build his wheelchair ramp that weekend. They thought owning papers and titles gave them power. They were wrong. Power isn't about the paper you hold. It's about the ground you stand on, the truth you're willing to fight for, and knowing that in the end they can take your house, but they can't take your home. Call to action. Now, I want to know what you all think. Was I right to use the road ownership to bring down the whole HOA? Or did I become the exact kind of tyrant I was fighting? Tell me in the comments below. When do neighborhood rules cross the line from community protection to criminal overreach? Hit that like button if you think justice was served, and subscribe for more stories about fighting for what's right.